Chapter 14 I Owe You. Arthur proved that he could follow directions and sat in the pub drinking beer by the pitcher, waiting for a call from his grandmother. The longer he waited in adult timeout, the more opportunity he had to reflect on how rude he had been. He did not know why. He just knew that whenever he was around her alone he felt inclined to verbally attack her. "Come on, Grandma, call," he said to himself after an hour of waiting and more pitchers of beer than he could remember. He was getting anxious and very concerned. Several hours later, and after his progression from beer to whiskey then to gin, his grandmother told him that he could come back, but Rachel did not want to talk to him or her, for that matter. "I don't think you realize how deeply you hurt her. She's up there in her room probably wondering if she'll stay or go." "Go?" "Yes, leave and go back to the States. Whatever drove her away from America to Clevelly must have been a huge hurt. But trust me, what you said and how you said it to her must have been far worse. I didn't mean to hurt her feelings. At first I was just teasing. Then things just got out of control, and the teasing became less playful and more what? More cruel. I had no reason to treat her that way, I know, but I only did it because I could, which makes it so much worse on my part. For her also. You literally ripped her to shreds and stripped her of any self-confidence or self-esteem that she had rebuilt since she came here." There was a long silent pause, then he confessed, "I think I like her," he said slowly, realizing that possibility for the first time after the words came out of his mouth. "Really? Perhaps. First things first. I've got to get her to want to see me or at least listen to me to deliver a proper apology. Do you have her mobile number?" "No, and I wouldn't give it to you even if I did. That would be a breach of the trust between us, not only as landlady and tenant, but would destroy our blossoming friendship. I don't even know if she has a phone." "No, sir, you got yourself into this, you must get yourself out of it." "Okay. You talked your way into it. Just talk your way out of it." He took his grandmother's advice about stopping for flowers first. He knew nothing about flowers, so he bought 24 long-stemmed red roses with a plan in mind. He had helped with the steps as well as the room itself and remembered there were around 23 steps from the ground to the door of the separate entrance. More than a little tipsy, he ripped the packaging off the exquisite flowers and tried to put a rose on each step, leaving him with one to give to her as a peace offering. "This has to work," he prayed. Once outside of her door, he felt paralyzed by nerves. No one had ever had this kind of power over him. He counted to 10 and then knocked. "Rachel," he called out, "it's Arthur. I'd like to." "Go away," she cut him off mid-sentence. Please listen, Rachel." She blasted music from her clock radio to drown out anything he said. Good, bad, or otherwise in between. She was fed up of believing false promises. They served no purpose other than to let her down. Once on that path to disappointment, more tears were not too far behind. He did not blame her for not wanting to listen to him after his earlier verbal attack. "Look, I get it. You're upset and you have every right to be. Just please open the door just a crack, please, Rachel. I'm so sorry. I want to apologize. I know I'm probably the last person on earth you want to talk to. But if you won't listen, then how can I apologize?" That got Rachel's attention. She turned off the radio and unlocked the door all the way up to the chain. By leaving it on, she left the slightest little crack open sufficient for him to beg her pardon, and gave her the equal ability and power to shut him out of the room and her future. It also gave him the slightest little glimmer of hope with no guarantees that any of this would go his way. She was the bigger person of the two and maybe with a little luck she would listen to his apology if nothing else. Her acceptance of it, however, would take a miracle. He pushed his last long-stemmed red rose, now wilting in his sweaty hand, through the door crack, watching several petals fall from her hand to the ground on top of her feet. "Yet another thing in worse shape thanks to my touch, huh, Rachel?" His tone was a gentle whisper, wanting more than a crack for communication but encouraged by it as opposed to nothing nonetheless. He kept talking, not waiting for any other further invitation to start speaking or a signal to stop. She looked him straight in the eyes from her side of the door. His eyes were red due to liquor. Hers were red from too many tears. "What do you want from me anyway? I'm just an incompetent servant, not even worth your time or politeness. Please. I'm sorry, please come out or let me in. I take it all back. I was playing around and then said many things I shouldn't have. I'm not perfect, but I'm enough of a man to face up to his mistakes and beg for a second chance with you. As friends." After he said his final word, she slammed the door shut. He turned to go down the steps a broken man when he heard the entire door creak open and saw the lights come on. She noticed the flowers, then gave a lingering look in his direction. "Did you do all of this? The roses on the steps?" "I did." Did Beatrice tell you to do this? No, I came up with it myself. I'll climb all 23 steps on my bare knees pierced by their thorns, if that would prove how sorry I am and if you would just accept my apology, Rachel. I'm begging you. Please? How I treated you was reprehensible. Why is this so important to you? I'm a nobody, remember? Or at least that's the way you treated me. Not as a guest in your home or your parish or your country for that matter. Why should I bother to give you another chance? That's all I've given you and you've gone from bad to worse, punishing me for things outside my control. Rachel, I want to wipe the slate clean. Amnesty. You reek of beer and cheap liquor. How do I know you won't have forgotten any or all of this when you get up hungover tomorrow and begin chastising me all over again? Emptied of answers but full of alcohol, the ultimate truth serum, Arthur sighed, then said, You don't. He paused, then concluded. But I do know I don't want to think of spending a future without you in it. He successfully made his way all the way down the 23 steps, and was turning to go to the rest of the house when she shouted, I accept your apology. Chapter 15. Friends? It was uncharacteristic for Arthur to care much, if at all, about the feelings of strangers. But there was something about Rachel that was different. Something about her got under his skin. She was upsetting all of his strong until now unchallenged beliefs. She had worked her way into his life at the least desirable time, while he was busy and stressed out studying for 2 American bar exams. The New York and California tests were known for being difficult, with many law graduates failing on the first try. He had neither the time or the inclination to deal with women right now. They just complicate matters, he thought. The next morning Arthur was slightly hungover but very keenly aware of what had happened the night before. He remembered that he had apologized to Rachel. To keep on the good side of his grandmother, he wanted to make sure that things were better between them, not just for a night, but going forward indefinitely. He pulled himself together and went to knock on Rachel's door. Rachel, it's Arthur. I know it's early, but do you have a minute? She heard his voice and wondered, knowing him, if he was there to take back his apology. She would not put it past him. Yes, she said, already half exasperated by his usually negative attitude toward her. She opened the door but did not let him in. Please make it a quick one. I need to get to work. About last night. Here it comes, she thought, the rescission of his apology. She summoned her courage and her public mask and got ready for a verbal battle with him before her day had officially begun. Look, Arthur, I think that if you came to... He cut her off mid-sentence. I was drunk last night and wanted to make sure that I was clear. I am not only asking for your forgiveness and acceptance of my apology, but for a truce. We got off on the wrong foot, that's all. A truce? A truce. Okay. She was surprised but willing to try to get along better with him as an almost housemate and a possible associate, or even someday perhaps as a friend. I can accept that. Thanks for following up. Oh, I'm in no condition to drive right now. He looked her up and down and saw how well put together she was today for going to work at the bakery. Are you good with getting to town on your own? Definitely. I planned on going to the pub for dinner after work anyway, so I might walk there and back. It's a nice day out. Good. Well, have a good day. Likewise. On the walk into town, she reflected on the whole Arthur situation. Well, he certainly is full of surprises, she thought. Before she got to the bakery she had a million thoughts about him and the power of a strong female presence, like his grandmother, on a grown man. She believed that the idea for the apology came 100% from her, not from him. She entered the bakery and greeted Faye. Every alarm at the store was going off in sweet. The code was not working. Oh no, they'll be here in a minute and charge me for setting the alarm off. Plus there are 100 voicemails on the catering line. Word is getting out about our sweet treats. Good day, Honorable. Strap on your armor. It looks like it's going to be one of those days. Faye was right. The entire day sped by. Their busy times were busier and their downtimes were non-existent as they spent that time responding to voicemail and filling orders. Rachel felt she earned her pub night after a day at work like that. She was grateful for the general amiable disposition of the customers and the success of the bakery, which meant job security for her in Clovelly. When they closed up, Rachel invited Faye to come with her for dinner at the pub, but the workday had worn her out. You're in your 20s but I'm in my 70s. Running a business like this takes its toll when you reach my age, honey. Have fun beating the men off with a stick. I meant to tell you how nice you look today. Hopefully someone other than me will appreciate that tonight, she said with a wink. I may be the first, but I bet there will be plenty of others at the pub tonight who will be eager to do the same. When she reached the pub, it was packed. It was ladies' night and there was live music by a local band. She grabbed a seat in a booth and took a few moments to catch her breath after her whirlwind workday. 10-cent wings would have made it perfect, but their fish and chips special on a Friday night would hit the spot just as well. Someone must have left behind a tabloid on her table. While she was waiting for her server, she decided to look through it to pass the time. Sure enough, on the top right-hand corner was a photograph of her fiancé, flanked by several exotic-looking, nubile females and partying on a cross-continent train. So my future husband is partying his way across Europe. Thank God I was a runaway bride and missed the boat with that one. Phew, she breathed a sign of relief. As the night went on, a man sent her 3 drinks. She acknowledged his generosity each time with a smile. She asked the server if he knew anything about him. Well, sweetie, if he was gay and sent me drinks, I'd be all over him by now, as fine as he is. Don't you worry. You can handle it tonight, girl. You look too fierce to be alone. Let me introduce you. The closer the man came, the more nervous she became. He was so good-looking. She felt out of place and uncertain. More than a little shy at the prospect of meeting such a handsome man, she decided to ignore her feelings of being a fish out of water and dive in. Chapter 16. A new friend? Rachel, this is Henry. Henry, this is Rachel. Rachel is new and works at the bakery. Henry's family was one of the original ones in the village many generations ago. Hi, Henry. Nice to meet you. Please have a seat. Henry sat next to Rachel, blocking her exit. He positioned himself in the booth with his face frozen in a smile and his hands in his lap under the table. I remember the first time you came to the pub. I wanted to send you a drink and talk to you then, but I'm an introvert. It took me a couple of drinks just to get up the nerve to send you one, not to mention 3. He giggled nervously. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief to wipe his noticeably sweaty hands, forehead and upper lip. Would you like a dessert? I see you already finished your meal. How about some ice cream? Let me guess. I bet you like chocolate. He giggled nervously. His nervous giggle was neither cute, amusing or infectious. He had none of the attributes that she considered attractive. He was not her type. She kept her silence with her arms folded across her chest and avoided eye contact, looking down and hoping he would read her body language that she was not interested in him. Rachel wished she could escape. To escape from the booth, he had to let her out. But how? You don't like these drinks I sent over? You have not sipped from any of them. Would you like something different? Beer, wine, whiskey, me. She took a sip too from each one to be polite and smiled. She searched her brain for a way out of this uncomfortable situation. Just when she was about to excuse herself to freshen up in the ladies' room and make a run for it, he made an attempt to involve her in his monologue. How about dinner tomorrow night? He put his arm around her, resting his sweat-covered armpit against her shoulder. Not at the pub, but to a restaurant with table linen and cloth napkins, fine silver, crystal and high-quality food like spaghetti. No thank you, I'll have to pass, but thanks. Really? You have to eat, so why don't we make an occasion of it? Dinner and a show at the movie theater, and afterwards a ride on my paddle boat around the lake. As tempting as that sounds, I have to say no. Why not? I sent you 3 drinks. Just tell me how much they costed and we'll be square. I can't stay out for dinner at all. I'm on the early shift, and in the bakery world, early means 3 a.m. Sorry. When are you off work again? I'm not sure. I might be needed for overtime. I'll let you know. Okay. What's your number? I don't have a phone. Incredible. I know, I'll swing by the bakery and pick you up and we'll leave from there. You're going to love their food. No, thank you all the same. Give me a break. I'm trying to get to know you after expressing interest with the drinks, but you won't give me an inch of leeway. I pay and everything. Just come out to dinner with me tomorrow. Please. I'll be less nervous by then, I promise. They have a bar at this restaurant, so I ought to be fine. She was defeated. He had successfully worn her down. The only escape from the booth with him in it would be to agree to the date, leap over him while pushing the table over using her superhuman strength garnered from her individual polite sips of the 3 mixed drinks he sent, and then bolt, getting the heck out of there and leaving this sweaty man far behind her. Realistically, she considered that he knew that she worked at the bakery, so he could come to her place of work and make things very uncomfortable for her, putting her in an awkward position. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. She struggled to say these 5 words and agreed to spending even more time with him, time that she dreaded spending, and time that she would never get back. Almost instantly she thought of Arthur. They were in no way dating or romantically coupled, yet she felt guilty. She felt like going out with Henry would be like cheating on Arthur. Not Kurt, her fiancé. But Arthur, a young man she only met a month ago and due to her living situation in this small parish. Would this be what a relationship with Henry be like? Being worn down until she agreed to whatever he wanted in order to get him to leave her alone? First the initial date, then a kiss, then more dates and more kisses. His whining and begging until she agreed to his proposal to marry him. Too quickly followed by a horrible honeymoon, then a miserable marriage with unappetizing sex after forever forced yes. Ultimately followed by a lifetime spent with someone she never even loved or wanted. I almost forgot to ask Henry. Rachel leaned in and cautiously spoke, not wanting to be thought of as interested in him in any way. What do you do for a living? I'm in sales. No wonder, he's a professional. He was practiced at wearing people down until they were stuck with some product or service that they didn't want or need. If only he would use his superpower for good and not for evil or personal gain. Henry had sold her on a date. And now Rachel was stuck with him, a man that she neither wanted or needed, bound for a date that she could not get out of. Chapter 17 Date Night. Rachel could not believe that she let Henry guilt her into a dinner date. She wished she had a friend who would call her on her cell phone with a fake emergency 15 minutes into the date, so that she could get out of it. Then she would permanently block his number and avoid him in town, like the plague whenever she was at the pub. No such luck. Her only two friends were Beatrice and Faye. She felt like this was not a favor she could request of a septuagenarian landlady or a manager, even though she had neither before. Henry came to pick Rachel up by the end of the day so that he would have time to park and walk up the stairs to her private entrance. Oh, how she wished it was someone else, anyone else, especially even Arthur. 3 knocks at the door and there he was in his full glory. A light gray polyester suit and a Kelly green tie with a handful of carnations, oddly resembling those that grew in Beatrice's flower garden. He could have brought her some radishes from the vegetable garden too, if produce was the way to a woman's heart. She guessed this was the best he could do in an effort to impress her with something women were supposed to respond positively to when going on a date. Hello, Henry. She greeted him in a quasi-monotone with a flat effect. She was not even looking forward to however long this date would last before the meal was over, and they would have a reason to depart. She made sure she had taxi fare so she would not have to bear the awkwardness of him dropping her off. He smiled a yellow-toothed grin and presented her with the familiar pilfered bouquet. Thanks. I'll put these in water. She had a glass of water on her desk and stuffed the entirety of them in it. She forced a smile of appreciation, grabbed her purse and descended the stairs with her date. It's spaghetti night at the restaurant, he said, in an effort to start a conversation. She guessed in-person social occasions had different requirements than the telemarketing he did to earn a living. His nervous laughter and begging she remembered from the pub were absent as they rode along in silence. He seemed so proud to have a date that he did not seem to mind the lack of conversation. Finally they reached the restaurant. He opened her door for her not out of chivalry, but because it was an old car and without his help she could not get out. She noted this in case in the future she wanted to get out before he was ready to release her while dropping her off. Once seated she was sure he would start to talk. Order whatever you like, he said. Anything that is a dinner special for Thursday would be fine. There was only one item listed on the daily dinner specials, and it was spaghetti served with a salad of plain iceberg lettuce and 2 pieces of garlic bread. Meatballs, grated cheese, and salad dressing were extra. Okay, thanks, she replied dismally. She looked around the restaurant noting the exits, wondering how easy it would be to get a cab. Had this been the level she had sunk into? A bargain dinner date with a man she had no interest in? While looking around she saw Arthur seated with Jane. Seeing the two of them together caught her by surprise and even made her feel a little jealous. She looked like she was on a date, he did not. She had taken off her jacket, intensified her makeup for night, and let down her long black hair. He looked like his mind was still in his law books studying for the bar. He wore jeans and a hoodie and an expensive pair of sneakers. Rachel felt hurt. Thinking of Arthur and Jane as a couple made her want to leave the restaurant even more. Trying to escape from that situation at least for a bit and get some fresh air, Rachel excused herself from Henry in order to freshen up in the ladies' room. But midway away from the table, she met Arthur headed for the bar. Hello, Rachel. What are you doing here? I'm with Henry. Her pride did not dare allow her to admit that it was a date. I'm hanging out with Jane. Just a study break, really. She talks so much about herself. I just needed a break from the original break. He chuckled. Believe me, I understand, she confided. I was kind of coerced into this date with Henry from the pub. Yeah, I should have warned you about him if I had known your plans. He can be a real leech off of a person's kindness. His MO is to guilt you into a social situation then say nothing and go Dutch on the bill. Not exactly a ladies' man. You can do better. I'll introduce you to some of my public school and university mates sometime. Really? She was relieved for so many reasons. Most of all to know that he was not interested in Jane. This represented a total change in how Arthur had acted towards her before. Maybe this was how the two of them would interact as friends. Despite the transition from rude to friendly, she wished she was the one out with Arthur and not Jane. Really, he affirmed. Oh great, I've been away from the table for a while and never made it to the bar. And I never made it to the ladies' room. Oh well, I doubt my time away would matter much with Jane's self-absorption anyway. They both smiled at being on bad dates and wanting to leave. If Arthur had asked Rachel to leave with him that very moment, she would have. As it was, this was probably her best opportunity to escape, but she thought better of it, engaged as she was in this opportunity to be with Arthur. She looked over at Henry at their table. Henry looks relieved not to have to talk. He and Jane should pair up. She could do all the talking and he could sit in silence except for the occasional nervous giggle. And she could pay if they ordered non-dinner specials. Both of them erupted into laughter. Shall we have a drink or two to bad dates before we return to them? Arthur flashed a devilish grin at Rachel. Absolutely. Chapter 18 Bad Dates. How did you wind up with Jane? Almost the same way you wound up with Henry, except I grew up with her. So, I've had almost a lifetime of her and her attitude even from an early age. How so? Our parents were college friends. They were always pushing us together. I guess they hoped that we would wind up together. Well, aren't you? Or why didn't you? We're not. She is too self-centered for me in the long term, but as a friend to hang out with, it takes my mind off of my legal studies to see the kind of life I could have wound up living. Kind of like a cheat day on a very restricted diet. She indulges in entertaining her fantasy of us becoming a power couple, and I get her off of my back from nagging me to go out together. To quote a friend, you can do better. Much better. Arthur laughed. I like small-town life and she prefers London. That's another point of discord. More like a deal-breaker. I love Clovelly. Then why are you preparing for bar exams stateside? New York and California aren't even in the United Kingdom. Ah yes, the big question. My grandmother is terrified that I'll go to the States and practice law there. But that is not the reason. That was never my intent. I have dreams that make the ability to be licensed in the States necessary. Such as? I'd like to set up a boutique law firm in Clovelly specializing in international trademarks and copyrights. The ability to be able to practice in New York and California is necessary to be competitive and lucrative. So much popular culture is exported from the US and those two places are the loci. Also my grandmother is getting up in age and I'd like to be near the only family I have left. Wow, that's awesome. Rachel almost shared that her father has huge mansions in New York City and Los Angeles, but caught herself. Jane and I both spent 2 summers clerking in the same multinational megafirm. I learned what I could and determined I could be more professionally and personally rewarded on my own. She stayed with the firm for the security, power, and prestige. That's Jane. I have more of an entrepreneurial spirit and basic business sense. That's me. What about you and the lean green tie-wearing machine? Rachel laughed. Like I said before, I felt guilty and backed into a corner by Henry. Plus he is too quiet and shy. That turns into this very annoying nervous laughter he lets out when he is in a new social situation. Trust me, he has no romance, no seduction skills, and no game to get with a woman like me. And what kind of woman is that? Arthur asked Rachel flirtatiously. Rachel smiled coquettishly, then tapped her glass for a refill. I like more of a challenge, touching him lightly on the nose with her index finger. See what you miss out on by being rude. All the little details and none of big benefits, she said in her sexiest voice with a wink, in an attempt to make a joke. Okay. I thought the apology was accepted. It was, but the raw memories remain. Touché. Tell me more about the law firm, she said, sipping on her second drink. Well, after I pass both, I'd like to move out of my grandmother's house and get a storefront with a 2-floor apartment for me and 4 other apartments above it that I could rent out. He elaborated. I can work from home and remotely with technology being what it is and things happening in the global marketplace. She leaned in to hear him better at the bar and noticed how close they actually were. She could smell his cologne and if she wanted to, she could reach out and touch him again lightly on the arm, if she felt like making a bold move. Arthur continued. But 2 bar exams are plenty to keep me busy at the library and at home, burning the midnight oil. She caught him focusing his attention on her lips, then looking her up and down and lingering on her legs. She was getting flustered and excited. The electricity between them was undeniable. Instead of connecting with him by gently touching him, she made a safe comment, supportive but not flirtatious. That's brilliant, Arthur. Thanks. What about you? She almost gushed that she wanted to be his wife and the mother of his children, but instead said, I just like to find my place in the world. I have a good liberal arts education but no idea what to do with it next. Thus the bakery. Right, thus the bakery. I did get a promotion. Do tell. I'm the assistant manager, she said with pride. And Faye pseudo-adopted me as her heir to run and own it. Business is booming. We can barely handle all of the demand we have now. Soon we'll be open extended hours and be fully available to catering. I've never had a job. Almost blowing her cover. Like this. There's no power and prestige, but I definitely have purpose and place in this community. I like small-town life here too, and despite the occasional Henry, it suits me fine. She could not escape how Arthur was making her feel. It was new but sensual. Although they were at the bar, they were both focused on each other. The entire world seemed to disappear from view. Arthur's glance was locked in at her lips. It was a different way for him to relate to Rachel, but she seemed open to his physical closeness and sexual advances. Was it possible to have intimacy in a bar full of people? It felt like a magnet was drawing them together, closer and closer, until both found themselves leaning in for a kiss. Chapter 19. See you. Arthur leaned in and was about to kiss Rachel, when all of a sudden both their dates appeared and separated them. Our food's been here for a while, said Henry. You've got enough money to pay for your special, right? What took so long to get me a glass of wine anyway? Jane asked Arthur. Did you become distracted and lose your way? She sensed that something was going on between Arthur and Rachel, and her impatience with him became anger towards her. The charm had broken. The magic had ended. Both Rachel and Arthur exchanged glances of profound regret and slight embarrassment as they were led back to the dates they had escaped from. They had shared an almost something special only to return to settle on a definite and ordinary mediocrity. For those few moments at the bar, they escaped a lack of compatibility with their bad dates, and got a taste of what the truly magnificent world of their togetherness after Arthur's still fresh apology could be like. Back at the table with Henry and Rachel, the earlier silence between the two was replaced by the swinish sounds of him slurping down his lukewarm spaghetti, and the unappetizing vision of him mopping up the remaining sauce with both slices of bread that came with the spaghetti special. By the time she returned, he had already consumed his plain iceberg lettuce salad. Once he finished his meal he seemed content. For him, this was an acceptable night out with a woman. He noticed a few spaghetti sauce spots on his long and thick, removable Kelly green tie. He used it as a napkin, having forgotten that his napkin had safely made it to his lap earlier. After he dabbed at his mouth, then clipped it back. As though that was not enough, he began to loudly suck his teeth, then use a toothpick at the table to eliminate the remainder of his meal from his teeth while still seated at the table. What a winner! Rachel thought. On the other side of the restaurant where Arthur and Jane were seated, things did not seem much better. A few times when she was able to make eye contact, she shot Arthur a couple of knowing glances, and he responded in kind. The loud and ongoing sound of Henry's subsequent burps, and the very unpleasant odor of his farts brought her focus back on her disappointing date as what made for the worst date ever. I think they serve fish and chips for Friday night special. Are you free tomorrow? No. Let me be clear. I'm not interested. Not in a second date with you tomorrow or any other day. Why not? Rachel could tell by his tone that he was about to use guilt and begging just like he did at the pub, what she now thought of as his telemarketer technique. She had experienced him twice and did not wish to do so any more ever again. In this case the third time would not be the charm but the third strike and he would be out of the game. Why wait when she was certain now that they were not a love match? She did not want to lead him on or suffer any further. She remembered what Arthur said at the bar. She could do better. She knew this was true, and if given half the chance, she would leap at the chance to do better indeed with Arthur. I'm simply not interested in you in that way. I'm going to catch a taxi home. But I brought you to this nice restaurant. It could become our place. Not if I'm not here with you. Then it's just your place. Alone. The last word alone seemed to rub him the wrong way and set him off. He stood up and started to make a scene. You are a selfish BT. I brought you here for a date. I thought you wanted me. All you seem to want to do is break my heart. Why did you accept the drinks that I bought you at the pub? You knew what you were getting into. How dare you treat me like this? I groomed for you. He continued to make a scene by escalating his drama and raising his voice while standing on his chair and ranting and raving, continuing to verbally attack her before the entire audience of the restaurant. By this point the manager came over to the table and asked if there was anything he could do. Rachel responded with a request for a taxi cab home as Henry continued from on high to lambaste Rachel and draw the negative attention of the other couples in the restaurant who were now trying to tune him out and make the best of their own versions of their abysmal Thursday date night. "Miss, your taxi has arrived," the manager came back to tell her. He had a message for her obnoxious dinner companion, too. "Sir, there are complaints about your behavior. If you continue to disturb the other guests at the restaurant in this or any other negative manner, I'll have to escort you out and ban you from ever returning to this fine establishment. Don't make me call the constables." The manager excused her bill, and she thanked the manager for the unique restaurant experience. By the time she left, a busboy and a waiter were trying to bring an out-of-control Henry down from standing on the top of the chair to stepping down the floor. She left the restaurant happy to finally escape Henry, but disappointed that the kiss failed to happen between her and Arthur. All of the patrons were focused on Henry, but she noticed that there was one pair of eyes on her. Arthur. Chapter 20. A walk in the park. Arthur wanted to make sure Rachel was okay, but Jane stopped him. Looking at her was one thing, but talking about his concern for her welfare with Jane was impossible. Jane had started to see Rachel as a rival in her romantic pursuit of Arthur. His volunteering to reach out to Rachel did not disabuse Jane of that notion. One thing that Rachel loved about Clovelly was all of the public green spaces. Each neighborhood had its own park. Even though the residents lived in beautiful homes with amazing gardens, like Beatrice, residents often walked, ran, and sat in local parks. After several weeks as a resident, she started to do the same. While she was looking for a bench during her lunch break, she bumped into Arthur. Although they both lived at Beatrice's house and usually carpooled together into and out of town, they never saw each other at other times. Arthur spent all of his time studying and Rachel kept busy in her new role of assistant manager at the bakery. If romance was going to take root between them, it would have to take place during rush hour or in the park on a nice day. "Rachel. Hey, thank goodness you are okay. Is everything all right?" "Hi, Arthur. I'm fine. Thanks for asking." "Of course. Seemed pretty awful in there. I wanted to check on you, but Jane." "I totally understand. No further explanation necessary. I made it home safe and sound. Fancy seeing you here. I needed to get out of the library for a bit. The concepts were just clouding my head over, and I wasn't having success absorbing any of it. Finding you in one of the parks of Clovelly is like finding a four-leaf clover. Lucky." Rachel smiled, then patted a vacant space next to her on the park bench. "Is the bakery closed during lunch hour?" "No. Faye gave me a long lunch break away from the store if I work a split shift." "Yes, I see. I remember you mentioning the new extended hours. Giving bigger coffee chains a run for their money." "Huh. Something like that. I could use a change of scenery after 8 hours in the public library. Maybe I'll stop by and grab a strong cup of coffee and extend my study hours at the bakery, then drive you home." "I would love that. I don't want to put you out or anything. You've been so generous with enabling me to get by without my own car." "No problem, it's my pleasure. Plus, I'd imagine you'd be too tired to walk after being on your feet all day long." "Yeah, thanks. We both know that you've got to save your taxi fund for your dating life," he said, taking a playful jab at her after the dating fiasco she had with Henry. "I've definitely closed the book on that one." They both had brown-bagged it. Lunch for Arthur was an apple, some walnuts and some carrot sticks with hummus. "What are you, a horse? All you're missing is a bowl of oats." "I had that before I left the house this morning," he chuckled. "I don't like to eat too heavy when I'm studying. It puts me to sleep." "The postprandial drop, huh?" "You got it. I barely have time for sleep as it is being so busy with studying. I really enjoyed our conversation at the restaurant the other night." "Yeah, me too. Too bad Jane has her claws in you, or I'd really give you a run for your money." "I'd like to see that." They laughed at the joke, but there was some truth in their responses. "Jane is more like a sister than a girlfriend," Arthur clarified. "I give you the go-ahead, remove her claws and stick your own in." Rachel was unsure of how to respond to the flirty comment that Arthur just made. She changed the subject to mask her shyness. "You don't talk much about that time, childhood in Clovelly. Who knows, you're a few years older than me, but my late mom was here around that time before my parents met and married and returned stateside. Our moms might have briefly known each other." Arthur's entire demeanor changed when Rachel started talking about late moms. He became colder but cordial. "I doubt it. My mom did not hang out with many Black Americans. She tried to pass." "Pass what?" Rachel asked. "Pass for white. It was one of the reasons that she married my father. She hoped for a boy to secure her future financially, but it needed to be a light-skinned boy to take his name as the third. She gave him an heir to his multi-generational fortune, but a biracial baby was not enough to keep them together. Although I am very light-skinned, my facial features and hair texture are more African-looking than Caucasian. A waste of his seed, she used to say. I'm sorry your mom felt like she had to do it, but she probably did it, because she wanted to give you a better life. Do you condone that kind of BS reasoning too? His brow furrowed and his voice got louder and angrier. This was the Arthur that Rachel remembered and was used to. I did not mean to touch a sore nerve. She reached out to touch his arm. No one means to, he said, snatching his arm away from her touch. It's just ignorance about what it's like to be biracial in the UK versus in the USA, Arthur stated with a matter-of-fact tone. She couldn't pass or fit in with a son with African-looking features no matter how light, and she left me here with my very white and very British father while she went to have a better life on American soil. Karma got her with cancer, he continued. But I, the son she abandoned, was the one she looked to for care in the end. I wanted a family with a mom and dad who loved each other and me, but I got sent away to prep school because my dad didn't want the burden of raising a biracial teenager, even if I was his son. You have no idea what I suffered here. He concluded, then just sat still on the bench for a few minutes to collect himself. I'm sorry, Arthur. I don't need your uninformed pity. I think I'll head back to the library. I may stop by the bakery after the library closes, but don't count on me for a ride, just in case I don't make it. He left her behind on the bench in the park to spend the rest of her lunch by herself. She spent her time thinking over how she could have known how else to respond. This man she was getting to know was in so much pain. She did not want to make it worse by bringing up a past he sought to bury or being a reminder of the kind of acceptance he wanted but was denied as a man of color, biracial and bicultural. Chapter 21. His backstory. Rachel came back to the bakery after her extended break with a disgruntled expression on her face. She did not look rested and ready to work the extended hours that she had agreed to. Faye noticed at once. Honey, are you all right? I gave you an extended break to sweeten your disposition, not sour it. You look like you just lost your best friend. What gives? Faye inquired. I went to the park and had lunch with Arthur. Oh, that sounds nice. I always liked that young man. So why the long face? It started off well but ended abruptly after I mentioned his late mom. Oh my. Yes, that is a sore spot with him. I guess. It was just so great at first going back and forth with light conversation. I don't understand. Let me preface this by saying he had a complex relationship with his parents, but especially with his mother, Faye began. I didn't know that was a subject that we couldn't discuss. He had a very hard time of it growing up with divorced parents on 2 different continents. Sometimes I think it's better for the family if the parents separate. All of that negativity can't be in the best interest of the child. That's all I meant when I told him that his mom left him behind with his father in order to give him a better life. Public prep school education, career guidance, and a male figure's advice and help in becoming a man. That's a mature and enlightened view. Unfortunately, little Arthur did not see it that way. He wanted his parents to be in love and stay together, providing a stable family unit, not bouncing him around from boarding school to boarding school in the United Kingdom, or pushed off on some unknown and unwilling relative of his mom's in the States. Everyone whose parents divorce wants that. He's not different because of that. Perhaps not. His parents' divorce was nasty, however. He lived with his mom in North America for a few months at a time, then with his dad in the United Kingdom for a few months at a time and back and forth. There was no stability until he came to live with his grandmother during his months off from school. Faye paused. His parents fought about every aspect of the divorce, using child custody as the ultimate way to hurt the other. They failed to focus on Arthur and they were hurting him most of all. He was my little helper at the bakery during his time with Beatrice for the school holidays. He worked hard and put himself entirely into every task he took on. Working in the bakery gave him stability. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on school holidays, he knew where he had to be. Even then he had a good strong work ethic. He did not mention that when I told him I was promoted to assistant manager, Rachel shared. It was a hard time. His father's work as a corporate attorney in London did not lend itself to child rearing, and all the travel he had to do was not good for Arthur. It uprooted him time after time. After an unsuccessful year of traveling across Europe with a nanny and a private tutor in hopes of his dad making him into a man, his father put him in boarding school without discussion. And his mom. She was trying to find herself back in the States, and that was code for pursuing a new man with deeper pockets. But usually when she had little Arthur, no matter for how long or how short the duration, she would leave him with some member of her family in Georgia, her family's home base, or with anyone she could push him onto for an extended time. She was not that particular. Faye's face looked very sad after she told this part of Arthur's story. He often wondered why they fought for custody if neither one wanted to spend the time or make the commitment to raise him past the age of 12. He never felt wanted or loved. Personally, I don't think they were cut out to be parents. That calling takes real self-sacrifice, Faye concluded. True. I had no idea. Even though he hated it and won't admit it, boarding school made him the intellect and hard worker that he is today. That and his time with Beatrice. Ah, okay, that explains a lot. The deference to her discipline, and not seeing time spent in boarding schools across Europe as a better life, like I said to him about his mom's choice. I don't know what he would have been like if Beatrice had not been there providing the personal touch when school was not in session. Boarding school and Beatrice turned him around. But there are boarding schools in America. Then he could have spent time with the mom he feels abandoned him. He could have been closer to her. Yes, honey, but she did not get enough child support to make that possible. Also, if he stayed with his American mom instead of with his British dad, Big Arthur was going to fight to reduce all of her alimony and keep her tied up in family court for years just to hurt her. Neither one of them was thinking about Trace. Little Arthur. He was their pawn within their divorce, then the custody battles, and within their fractured family several years thereafter. Rachel chimed in. Parenting is a lifelong job, not only up until the teen years or up through college. I lost my mom when I was about to start my senior year in college and I was 19. I still miss and need her until this day. Not everyone has that luxury of having a mom as long as they'd like to, honey, or they'd set the default on forever if blessed with a good mom. Not everyone has a good mom either. The afternoon break patrons started filtering into the bakery, expecting their tea, so the chunky and informative conversation with Faye about Arthur's backstory had to be put on pause. Her processing of it, however, did not. She reached for a pastry, she thought about Arthur. She brewed tea, she thought about Arthur. She rung up an order on the cash register, she thought about Arthur. She swept the floor, she thought about Arthur. He was a challenge, and now that she knew more about him and how he grew up, she understood more. Because she understood did not mean that she would tolerate his sometimes brooding, rude attitude toward her. It only meant that she would have more patience when he turned from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde. She was no counselor or therapist. She was not skilled in helping him with reconciling his past with his present. She worked through her longer workday of never-ending bakery tasks, hoping that he would stop by after the library closed. No matter how busy things got, her thoughts continuously drifted to wondering which aspect of his personality was the better kisser, and when the next opportunity would present itself for her to find out. Chapter 22. Be mine. The problem with working in the public, like at the bakery, was sometimes the easy access the members of the public had to you. The jingle bells on the door rang and in came Henry. He was holding flowers, a heart-shaped box of assorted chocolate candies, a small jewelry box, and a super huge teddy bear. Henry, I have no time for this. If you are not buying anything but came to see me and try to woo me, I need you to leave. I am working. Hear me out, hear me out. I need you. I bought you these expressions of my affection, so you have to take me back. That's what the lady at the florist said. She said these purchases were a guarantee for romance. I don't care what you are expecting from me because of these trinkets. But you are not the one for me, and I wish you would end your romantic pursuit of me. You have crossed the line by coming to my job. Anyway, I have a boyfriend. All's fair in love and war, and this was starting to develop rapidly into the latter. No, you don't. You're just saying that to make me leave. If you're so smart and you think you know so much about me after 2 public outings, including my couple status, then you would know that I don't want you, I'll never want you, and I don't want you here at my job. She paused, hoping her words would sink in, act as a catalyst, and motivate him to give up trying to make a romance between them where there was none. She hoped he would finally leave the bakery and leave her alone in the future. He did not. She could see this pest was not going to be so easy to eradicate. What's your boyfriend's name? What's he like? Well, he's tall, dark, and handsome. He's an Oxford-educated lawyer. He's on his way here to pick me up after work. And he's crazy jealous, so you better leave or he'll pummel you until you are reduced to slithering out of here on your belly. A broken and bloody mess. Off you go. Leave now before you regret it. You still didn't answer all of my questions. What's his name? If you have a boyfriend, you would know his name. You don't have a name because you don't have a boyfriend. Trace. His name is Trace. All of those qualities were true of Trace now, Arthur, except for the jealous boyfriend part. It was a matter of peace of mind. She felt she could embellish a little for the greater good of getting him out of her place of employment. She did not want to say or do anything that would lead Henry on from here on out. She was praying hard for Arthur to stop by after the library closed. The harder she prayed, the worse and more vocal Henry became. Why did he have to glom onto her anyway? Was it because she was probably the newest woman to this small village in ages? Look at what I brought to you, bought and paid for with my own money. Jewelry, chocolate, flowers, and a plush stuffed bear. Can I at least put this locket with my picture inside of it around your neck? No, no, no. No, you can't, and no, you won't. Please leave. She shouted loudly. No. I'm not leaving until I see him with my own eyes. You are all alone. No customers except for me. You have to serve me until closing. I'll have a cup of Darjeeling tea, Mississippi. He was right, she was alone, and as long as he was a customer he had a right to be served and a right to be there. But he did not have the right to her company as though she was a patron. She was working, and she would make sure that she cleaned every inch of the bakery to avoid him, and make sure that she kept busy working until closing. When she finished her chore she would start taking inventory, all to send a negative message to this clueless pain in the A. If he still would not leave at closing, then that became a matter for the police to escort him off the premises and for her to consider getting a temporary restraining order to block his borderline stalking. She cleaned her heart out, and unless he ordered something she ignored him. Unfortunately for her, he had money to burn tonight. First Darjeeling, then Rooibos, then Oolong, and now Orange Pico. At least he was not nursing each drink. 4 hours and 4 teas later, it was still the two of them. Rachel's hope faded as closing time was almost there, and the prospect of spending any amount time with Henry after the store closed was a personal crisis that was looming. She walked over to the front door to lock it, but as she pulled it closed, she felt a force on the other side pushing back. It was Arthur, aka Trace. She had never been so happy to see anyone before in her entire life. She let him in, and getting on her tiptoes, Rachel wrapped her arms around Arthur's neck and pulled him in for a passionate, Chapter 23 easy favor. Oh Trace, I'm so happy to see you, she said. I was starting to think that you would never get here before closing time. She hugged him and whispered in his ear. You are Trace, my boyfriend. Please play along. He whispered back, a little weak in the knees after that earthquaking kiss she had planted on him. Faye asked me to check in on you. I'll follow your lead. Henry had to acknowledge that there was a boyfriend, but he wasn't happy about it. He sat the teddy bear in one of the chairs with the heart-shaped box on the table before him, and put the locket around the teddy bear's neck. Lastly, he put the flowers under one of the big teddy bear's arms. Please excuse me. My name is Henry. He fixed his glasses and asked, Don't I know you from somewhere? Trace. I am Trace, and I am here to pick up my girlfriend, Rachel. All three of them were surprised, but Henry was also very upset. He turned his anger to Rachel in an effort to get clarification, and maybe also some support for how their relationship had progressed over the past few days. Where was he? At the pub when I bought you drinks, when I sat with you and invited you on a date, when I took you out to dinner for a genuine Italian meal? Rachel had no idea what to do or say at that point. She had not planned things out past the passionate kiss. Afterwards she had her own challenges coming back down to earth. Thank God Trace, her boyfriend, was a master at thinking on his feet. I was working. I travel a lot for work. I was working out of town. Thank goodness I can trust my girl to do nothing that would ever be construed as cheating. She told me about you each time when we had our nightly pillow talk via FaceTime. You must be the older gentleman she befriended. She mentioned how lonely you seemed and how she agreed to keep you company as a neighborly good deed and as a newcomer to Clovelly. Yes, Trace. He's the one. She had no intention of dating you. She had me. I do hope that you didn't get the wrong idea. Trace extended his hand to shake Henry's. Trace continued. How old are you anyway, 30? If you knew my Rachel, then you would know that she never could be romantically interested in an older gent. Especially that much older. I'm 25 and she's 21, and it took some convincing on my part to get her just to go out on a date with me. Trace chuckled as he held and squeezed Rachel's hand. Henry took off his soda bottle-thick glasses and cleaned them with his handkerchief. He looked at both of them once without the glasses and then again with the glasses on. He shook his head in disbelief. I don't believe that for 1 minute. Why did she come out with me? How come she didn't tell me about you? I'm confused. Sir, I'm back in town for the long run now. I am so grateful that you both were able to be a little less lonely together. Sorry about any misunderstanding. What a shame that you mistook her kindness for something more. It's getting late. Try to get home safe and sound. At that Arthur walked him out and held the door open for him to go. Murmur humph. Henry grumbled as he left the bakery, not sure what happened, but already back alone in his little world and out of their hair. After Henry left, the teddy bear was the only customer left in the bakery. Rachel locked the door right away and hugged Arthur, now released from the role of Trace for a day. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. I could have talked to him until I was blue in the face and he never would have left me alone. Thank you so much. Hey, I was happy to help. But really it was my pleasure, believe me. You pled my case with zeal and won my freedom from an infinite number of future disastrous dates with him. You know that he's a gossiper at the pub. Poor soul, he's a disabled war veteran. By this time tomorrow, however, everyone in town will know that we're dating. That's small town living for you. In his defense, something this exciting doesn't happen every day. Then there'll be the questions about when we are going to get married, have kids. The list goes on. Arthur smiled. Well, I'm game if you are, Rachel beamed. I had no idea that he would be so challenging to detach from. I was just being friendly, believe me. Oh yes, definitely. But look at it from his point of view. For people in this village, you and now us, we are big news. Someone new in town marks possibility, even hope. Again, thank you so much. I owe you for the favor. And again, it was an easy favor to perform. Believe me when I say that the pleasure was all mine. I did not mind a bit. I don't know if you know it or not, but you are quite the kisser. You practically knocked me off my feet with that solid shot of amazing affection. And then calling me Trace, a name that only family and old friends call me. It was a pleasant experience. Really? Really? That kiss was so convincing that it alone could have turned a jury of my peers in my favor. They both realized that they were holding hands and smiled at each other. Rachel gently squeezed Arthur's hand, then he released it and pulled her in to hug her tightly. Rachel did not want him to ever let her go, but they could not stay in the bakery all night with the lights on. I've got to turn off the lights and lock up Arthur. She knew if she stayed in this position with Arthur much longer, another kiss would be the start of so much more. Are you able to give me a ride home? Yes, I am. I mean, earlier you said. Rachel. I know what I said, and once again I am asking your forgiveness if you'll accept my apology. I hate that I am always apologizing, but here I am again doing just that. You are fantastic, and I can be a real jerk when it comes to talking about my parents and how life played out after their divorce. Let me make it up to you by taking you out, here or to London or anywhere. There aren't many choices for fine dining in Clovelly that you haven't already experienced. Nope. Bakery, pub and restaurant. That's the extent of my fine dining experiences here. We'll just have to date to keep up appearances. There is one place that is on the edge of town that I doubt you have tried or even noticed. It's a bit of a hole in the wall, but the food is excellent and it stays open late. Sounds great, Arthur. I'm looking forward to it. But what will my boyfriend Trace say? They laughed on the outside, but inside they were both concerned about pretending to be a couple. They were just starting to have real feelings for each other. A pretend relationship could confuse them. Separating the real from the pretend could leave them with a mess. Or worse, one or both of them could get hurt in the end. Chapter 24, Spending Time. It was her day off, and the part she was looking forward to most was a date with Arthur. She wanted to knock his socks off, so she booked a hair and nail salon appointment, and a spa day. If she had access to her parents' wealth, the cost of these pampering and self-care treats would have been less than a drop in the bucket. On her bakery pay, it represented almost 2 weeks' wages. She took the intercity bus and set off on her adventure in search of transforming into a beauty. All 3 appointments would take up 6 hours, but she really wanted to make a big impression on him. On the way home, she decided on her wardrobe. A diaphanous dress of gold from the boutique in Clovelly. She applied her makeup with care, and then waited for his knock and his shock at her total preparation for a date with him. Then at 6 on the dot he arrived. Rachel. He spoke as though his breath was being taken away. You are so gorgeous. Wow. Thank you, Arthur. You look quite handsome yourself. Aren't we a pair? Gone were the hoodie, jeans, and sneakers he wore for a night out with Jane. Yes, we are. He replied, then responded with a kiss on each of her soft, powdered cheeks. I have something for you. Give me your hand, please. He kissed her hand and then clasped a corsage around her wrist. She kissed him with a quick peck on his mouth in gratitude. Are you ready? Yes, sir. Then prepare to be wowed, Clovelly style. She smiled and gave him her hand so they could start the date together with something as simple as walking down the stairs together. He opened her car door and helped her in. When both were situated in seatbelt, he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek again. The corsage and the gentlemanly gesture of opening the car door for her were both nice touches to add to the reality of their pretend date. If she was truly being wooed, This would have been a wonderful start to the date. In case I forget to tell you later, I had a wonderful time, Arthur. And in case I forget to tell you later, this is the best day I have had in a long time. Maybe ever, Rachel. With that exchange of pre-date gratitudes, they took off, on their way to align themselves with destiny. They started their date with the anxieties of a new couple on their first date, but quickly transitioned to the joy and familiarity of a lifelong, seasoned couple renewing their promises to love one another forever, and always to keep the romance alive. He was right, it was a hole in the wall, but it was the place to be. Younger people around their age were enjoying food and fun. There was also live music. After a short wait for the table, once they were seated, Rachel reached across the table and squeezed Arthur's hand. Each table had candles and fresh flowers. The glow of the candlelight flatters you, Rachel. Ah, you are so sweet. Thank you. The two of them discovered each other through words and flirtatious touches above and beneath the table. When the food came, they took turns feeding each other so they could sample the other's dish. If he did not have her attraction at the corsage or the meal, the dessert definitely sealed the deal. Chocolate was her passion, and one of the desserts on the tray was chocolate mousse pie. He was scoring bonus points all over the place with this date. Every action seemed honest and true, so much so that the lines between real and pretend were becoming blurred in Rachel's eyes. They were so busy having fun in each other's company, that when they looked up at the end of their meal after their third cup of coffee, they realized that the band stopped playing and the house lights were on. It was midnight and they had shut the restaurant down, but nobody forced them out. There was no longer an audience to perform for. What kept them there after the restaurant had closed? None of this was necessary, but they were enjoying playing in the land of make-believe, and completely caught up in the ruse. They didn't have to say it in the midst of all of the pretending, but they were really falling in love. When they reached the car, Arthur said, "I know it's after midnight, but is there any place Cinderella has to be tonight? I missed the last pumpkin coach headed for home in Clovelly. Could you please give me a ride?" "Princess, you got it." Forever was what their time felt like, and neither one wanted the evening to end. However, there was something each of them was holding back. For her, it was her vast wealth and engagement, and Arthur's mercurial temperament. For him, it was wanting to stay in the village, pursue his goals as a solo global legal practitioner, and take care of his grandma until she passed away, returning the care she showed him when he needed it most. He also needed to know more about Rachel's background. Was she hiding something? For both of them, their private commitments to family seemed decades away. Time was all they had and needed, but it was a gift of grace, not a limit for them that night when everything seemed new and delightful as young love can be. They were focused on the passion of the present moment. Right there, right then, right now. They stayed in his car, exchanging a lifetime of experiences through endless conversation, discovering in the other more than a best friend or a casual lover, and more like a partner. A few tender moments were their refuge from the imminent reality full of duties and obligations that would send him back to the library and her to the bakery in mere moments. But comfort for the two came in stages, delivering an unspoken yet undefined blessing, easily translated from the new day's sunshine into their smiles and afterglow of sensuality before they were separated. It was so perfect. But was this all real or just to keep up appearance? Chapter 25, Suspicions. There was no doubt that what started out as fake was now becoming real for Arthur. It took him almost an hour at the library to come down from cloud 9. He tried to stop thinking about Rachel and spend more time thinking about the bar review materials he was supposed to be studying, but without success so far. She's driving me to distraction, he thought, remembering all the highlights of their, for appearances only, date night. Just as he pulled out his laptop to look at his legal outlines, he could not resist looking her up online. Falling for her now did not erase his healthy curiosity that she was not exactly the average girl next door type. If she is rich, then that wealth must have an online presence somewhere, he reasoned. Let's find out exactly who this young lady is. He tried search after search of her using different search engines. 1 hour, then 2, and finally 3 hours passed, and there was no webpage, image, blog, or any other social media connection that he could find. Arthur thought it was odd not to find anything, and that made him not merely curious but suspicious. She's either so well off that her wealth could buy her complete anonymity, or she's making up the entire story in order to have a more interesting experience abroad. He slammed his laptop shut, upset that he had spent so much irretrievable, invaluable study time on finding out more about his pseudo-girlfriend and the things she had not told him yet. He also felt bad that he did not trust what she said, but was even more suspicious of what she failed to say. Maybe it was due to his legal training, but if she had something to hide by omission, he would find out what it was sooner or later as they got to know each other better. no matter what the pretense or how challenging she would make it for him for whatever her reasons. He decided that he'd go on a walk to clear his head. He had no specific destination in mind, but he found himself at the bakery 10 minutes later. He popped his head in and saw Faye at the cash register. "Hey stranger, long time no see." He went over and gave her a friendly kiss on the cheek. "Yeah, Miss Faye. The law is a jealous mistress, so they say. Something tells me that you're not just here on a coffee break." He smiled then looked away, trying not to be too transparent. "I wanted to say hello to your assistant manager. She's working a split shift today, bless her heart. She has truly been a godsend. And helpful, oh so helpful, just like you were when you would come by and help out. I'm not seeking an employment reference, I was on a break out and about, and thought I'd say hi. I was in the neighborhood." "Right, Arthur. Please tell me that you will be better at representing your clients in a more convincing and truthful manner. We wouldn't want Oxford University to take your diploma back. After 800 years there could always be a first time." She winked at him. Okay. I might as well get a coffee since I'm here." "Of course." Service with a smile. "Mine not hers. Oh well. The next time perhaps." He wasn't sure if he should take it to go or sit and wait to see her. He didn't have the luxury of time to be able to wait another few hours trying to study at the loud bakery or even skip studying altogether and be actively engaged in expectant waiting alone. He decided he would take it to go, to get back to the library and his pre-Rachel commitment to passing the 2 bar exams on his first try. He stopped past the park on his way back to the library. He was hoping to catch a glimpse of her eating lunch but had no such luck. Once back at the library, refreshed from the walk and re-energized by his cup of strong, fresh, coffeehouse coffee, he sat down to study. He was finally able to get started on the materials on evidence and abandon his fruitless search for the lovely Rachel. "Hello patrons," he heard from the librarian on the loudspeaker. "What now?" he said to himself. "The library will be closing early today for staff development. We apologize for any inconvenience." Staff development? He wondered, wanting to scream at the top of his lungs. "I'm the only patron. I'm completely self-sufficient and satisfied being left alone to study. And they feel they need staff development? For what?" He angrily packed up his materials and chalked it all up to a day of progress lost with his studies. Today it was not meant to be, no matter how disciplined he tried to be. He headed home to spend some time with his grandma before locking himself away in his bedroom for a long night studying. No date, either fake or real, tonight to look forward to, unfortunately. He smelled the zucchini chocolate chip bread from outside before he entered the house. He said. "Someone's been baking." "You're right about that, grandson, but this time it wasn't me. It was Rachel and you just missed her." "Not in the cards today," he mumbled and hugged his grandma's neck. "What's that, sweets?" "Oh, nothing, Grandma. I don't mean to be rude, but I have gotten absolutely nothing of merit done today. To study," he said, betrayed for the first time by anxiety related to his ambitious goal. "That's fine. I understand. Remember not to forget the wee little ones who knew you way back when," she said and then grinned at him. "You are unforgettable for so many reasons, Grandma." "It looks like I'm not the only one who is unforgettable," she responded. "That's pure hearsay and you can't believe it without going directly to the source," he teased her, then ran up the stairs 2 steps at a time. "I just did," she called up after. Chapter 26. New equipment. "Oh no," Faye exclaimed. "It's broken. One of my ovens is broken. I've been trying to keep it going as long as possible, but it won't work anymore." She was upset and disappointed. "Can you order it?" Rachel suggested. "You can, but that would take weeks and I can't run the bakery with one oven down. We've been pushing what we've got as much as possible as it is. I'd have to take a day and go to London, that is if they have it or not," she concluded in utter exasperation. "I see. I could go if you want." "That would be wonderful, honey. I'll see if I can borrow Arthur's car. Just tell him his second grandma needs a favor, and I'm sure he'll either loan it to you or take you in it himself." Faye was right. He agreed despite knowing that a trip to London and back would mean another lost day of studying, but an adventure with Rachel seemed much more exciting at that point in his life, so he didn't hesitate to take her. They left early the next morning. "Thanks for agreeing to do this, Arthur. It's hard to refuse to help Faye, isn't it?" "Yeah." Arthur was not a morning person and this was becoming evident. They rode there in silence, each in their own world. Rachel made a few half-hearted attempts at conversation, but it was not until they arrived in the heart of London after what seemed like endless rush-hour traffic that he came to life. Both of them had skipped breakfast in order to get an early start. She was feeling hungry and thought he might also want to eat. She offered to treat Arthur to brunch for the good deeds, the use of his time and the gift of service with his car. She asked him if he could recommend a place. When I was studying at Oxford, there was a place in London we students would go to. They had a fantastic curry. I think it's very close to here and they might be open this early, although they mainly cater to a lunchtime crowd. Great. Let's go. He was much more upbeat once he had eaten. He offered to show her the sights of the city on their way to get the replacement part. He drove with one arm around the back of her neck. Have you ever been to London, Rachel? I have. I rode through it to get to Clevelly in my cab from the airport. Does that count? She was getting better and better at her little omissions and white lies that she told to preserve her identity in the role of Rachel, fearless, young American woman abroad. The secret to her lies was their believability. She also never embellished with detailed answers to people's questions. She gave them the answer that they were expecting or its exact opposite and then either changed the subject or remained silent while they talked about themselves, most people's favorite subject. This was true in most cases, although not all. Arthur was proving to be the exception to the rule, asking ongoing follow-up questions and coming close to treating their conversations about her background like a deposition or worse, the cross-examination of a hostile witness. He was learning to notice when she was going to change the subject, and this time he changed it right back. At one point while on their journey he seemed so vexed by her efforts to steer the conversation away from herself that he pulled over and shouted, "Why on earth are you making it so hard for me to get to know you? What are you hiding?" He demanded, instantly withdrawing his arm from around her, flashing angry eyes, along with erupting into a loud tenor voice with a deeply critical tone. There it was. He wanted to know her. But which her did he want or could he handle? The billion-dollar heiress or the shop girl? The engaged young woman or the runaway bride? The whole truth of her past or all of the lies that she had carefully placed at the foundation of their relationship? As she got to know him better, she still could not predict when he would explode into one of his fits of anger. Did he deserve her truth, or were constructed omissions satisfactory for someone with his anger management issues that he seemed to keep on reserve just for being rude to her? That was the biggest thing holding her back from moving forward with him to a real boyfriend-girlfriend relationship from a fake one with a friendship foundation. He would get angry, explode, then apologize. Was this behavior cycle something that she wanted to condone? Why are you assuming that I'm hiding something anyway? There you go again. What? Are you predetermining how I am allowed to respond to you too? Is that fair or even polite? But you've proven over and over again that politeness is not something you care about as far as your interactions with me are concerned. Since you are so full of questions, why do you demand that I trust you with all of my baggage when I can't consistently rely on you not to be mean to me with your eloquence and your Oxford education? Did they teach you to belittle people as part of your course of study there? She realized that she was no better than him with the tone and temper she was using to defend herself in her efforts to hurt him. "Okay, Rachel," he said, pulling the car over to the side so both of them could calm down from their heated exchange of words. "It's clear to me that you are going to avoid my questions by responding to my questions with a question. You're going to keep the focus on me to keep the focus off you. I'm not moving this car until you answer my question. Rachel, who are you? I'm the same woman you were rude to on the plane, that you startled by sleeping in my bed, that you apologized to at your grandma's, and that you kissed in the bakery. But most of all, I am the same woman that thought she was starting to feel real feelings for you on a fake date. Is that real enough for you?" she said, with her eyes tearing up and her voice wavering. Chapter 27 London Boy. "Are you going to show me some of the sights of the city or not?" Rachel asked Arthur. It had taken them over 4 hours to get to the city. He realized that he had not meant to, but he had done it again. He had hurt her feelings. He believed he was genuinely starting to feel for this young woman, however. If only he could stifle his rudeness and abrupt manner. If only he could feel that letting this beautiful woman into his life would benefit, not hurt him. If only he could figure out why he directed his anger towards her. He did not feel like he could be the best possible tour guide, but he did love the city. The more places they went, the more comfortable he felt. The more comfortable he felt, the more even-tempered he remained. This was the friend zone, and he was able to navigate these waters better than the more real and romantic uncharted territory with Rachel. He combined national landmarks with some of his old haunts from his school days. He liked seeing the city through her eyes and developing a new appreciation for it. They both felt that they could spare the time before picking up the part for Faye. By the time they were done sightseeing, he had made his own discovery. Rachel seemed more comfortable in London than he would have assumed of the average girl next door. It was almost as though she had been there before. It was an odd realization, but he brushed it aside and headed for the restaurant supply store. Most Americans would need an adjustment period to get used to the hustle and bustle of London. You seem to take it in stride. Is it me, or are you a secret globetrotter? Arthur teased her. Right. You found me out. I am really a globetrotter and a spy. I'm so undercover right now that you'd need a top security clearance for me to tell you why I am working at a bakery in Clovelly. It's all very complicated, very, very complicated secret stuff, she teased back. Rachel had let her guard down and decided to put all of their negative interactions aside, so that she could enjoy being with Arthur in these precious London moments. She found Arthur to be a delightful tour guide. He seemed to be letting his guard down as well. She saw her family's townhouse that her father would stay in when doing business there. She played off her familiarity with that nicer part of the city, and left herself in Arthur's capable hands. We are finding our comfort level with each other on this little trip, don't you think? Rachel said as they sped through the city streets. Yes, I noticed. Feels good. Maybe we needed a field trip as part of our fake relationship, Arthur commented, trying to keep things light. I think our real relationship needed it as well, she bravely countered. They smiled at each other and continued on their journey. When they reached the store, they wandered the aisles looking for their tiny part among thousands and thousands of tiny parts. No wonder Faye was so exasperated over it. The store had one associate and he was always busy. Maybe all bakery-related establishments operated on the same principle of 10 jobs for every one person. After a lack of luck finding it on their own, they waited until the store associate had a free moment, with Rachel and Arthur making small talk in the meantime. Thanks for sacrificing your study time to come into London with me. This is fun. My pleasure, Rachel. I felt it was the least I could do with all I put you through. I'm glad you are having fun. Next to Clovelly, which is my hometown, I feel like London is my home city. It is quite a change from small-town life. True. London is my mind but Clovelly is my heart, Arthur shared. Exactly. Tickles me that there is one store like this with all of these parts. But I could only imagine it in London. How so? She was about to share a story about a similar adventure she had gone on with her mom and dad in London, when she was a little girl and tried to play it off. I just meant, like with all big cities like this, there are usually businesses that cater to the nuts and bolts of other businesses. Everything has its place. She was safe. Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I never thought of it that way. London seems to have more than others. It's a supplier and a headquarters for many businesses. I love hearing your analyses, Rachel said, quickly trying to change the subject. Trust me, yours are just as interesting. At that very instant, when she felt that he was about to get deeper than she cared to while chatting with him, their wait was over and the store associate was available to help them. The associate was familiar with the part, oddly enough, and easily found it in that store, where there was a place for any and all things restaurant-related. Rachel was grateful for the interruption. Thank you. This definitely looks like a match, but so did all of the others. But it has the same serial number, right? It would have taken us ages to find it, she said. Yes. Thanks, Arthur said, shaking the store associate's hand. We've been in the city for a long while and should probably head back before traffic gets too heavy, Rachel suggested. True. But I think if we stay in the city for an early supper, we'll kill two birds with one stone. Eating and getting to know each other better, hopefully in an amicable way. Plus we'll escape rush hour. Why don't you text Faye on my phone and let her know we found it? It'll put her mind at rest from worry. Let her know she'll have it first thing in the morning once we are back in town. Okay, Rachel said to Arthur. Then, turning her attention to the associate, she said, You can bill it to the store's account, she said, giving him the store's account number. As soon as they left, Rachel's eye captured something and her heart stopped beating when she saw someone that she never would have imagined, and she saw someone she had almost stopped thinking about,